Brandon, and we are at Abdeen Palace in Cairo. Awaiting us is President Anwar al-Sadat, President of the Arab Republic of Egypt. In November 1977, President Sadat, on his historic peace initiative, told the Israeli Knesset he had come to demolish a wall of rejection, fear, hallucination. Today, he and I are going to take a swing at another wall, a wall much older, far longer, and in some countries, just as high. Thank you so very much for the privilege of being with you today, Mr. Sadat.
Not all, thank you.
On the very day that I left for Egypt, the first copy of your book came off the press, and I've been entrusted with the honor of delivering it to you personally, In Search of Identity.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
That's an intriguing title. What did you mean about that, by that title?
Well, it is this. In search for my identity, really, I was searching for the identity of my nation. And you shall see that everything happened here coincides with the history of my country in the since the time I was born until this moment.
You know, Egypt has had some very great kings, but I don't know of any head of state of Egypt who has really laid down his life for his people as you have.
I feel that it is a great responsibility and that God that has put me in this position. So I must fulfill my mission. And every human being has got a mission. The difference between the human being that lives even after his death and the other that ends by death, it is the mission. Everyone has got a mission.
Yes. You know of the identification that we Christians have felt with Israel, and that God is telling us, without taking our one arm around Israel, we should put our other arm around you. But you Arabs have an identification with Israel too.
They have lived among us, believe me. The only place in the world that there has never been any discrimination was in the Arab world, where the Jews lived with us in complete harmony and on the same status. This is historically known. In Europe it was different. In every place it was different.
Well, it's rather interesting, isn't it, that in Spain, during the Moorish rule, which of course was Muslim, the Jews prospered greatly, and then the Moors were ousted, and the Inquisition took over, and the Jews had to leave the country.
That's right. That's right. In the Islamic Empire, doctors, scientists, professors, in every way, the Jews are lived with us, and they are in our history. More than that, our father is one.
What do you mean when you say you have the same father? Would you just go into that?
Our father is one, Abraham. You know, yes. Abraham has married Sarah. Israel, and he has a son, Israel. After that, he has married an Egyptian woman called Hagar.
Yes.
And he has Ishmael as his son, and he has put them there in Mecca, where our the holy house of God is there in Mecca, in the same place that Abraham put his wife Hagar and his son Ishmael. Well, Ishmael is the father of the Arabs. Israel is the father of the Israelis. Well, they are brothers, Ishmael and Israel.
I know that you're very much concerned about the wall between Israel and Egypt, but I think you're equally concerned about the wall between the Christian and the Muslim. Is that true?
Well, fortunately, we don't have this wall here in Egypt. But, yes, in some places, because maybe of illiteracy or so, or of maybe historical reasons like the Crusades or so, but a true Muslim will never be a true Muslim without recognizing Moses, the Bible, Christ.
Now, you said there's no wall here, and I've been here for several weeks on 2 occasions, so I recognize the fact that there is practically no wall. And yet, there is a rumor around in the United States that a law has been passed here that any Muslim who converts to another religion is executed.
Well, this is completely not true. This law was proposed by someone in the assembly, but it was refused here. But unfortunately, the same thing happened, the same law there in Israel, and it was accepted by the Knesset there. My assembly didn't accept it here.
Well, you know, Americans are extremely concerned about religious liberty because, after all, that was our reason for our founding in the first place. You mean a man like, for example, Billy Graham could come here and hold a crusade in a stadium or something like that?
Why not? Why not? Why not? I am planning, whenever the Israelis withdraw from Sinai, to build on the mountain, Sinai mountain that God spoke to Moses.
Yes.
This is in my land in Sinai. I'm going to build a mosque, a church, a synagogue in one site. And the prayers to be prayed in the same moment by Muslims, Christians, and Jews.
I don't know if you're aware of how much ignorance there is about the Muslim religion among us Christians, but I grew up as a schoolboy thinking of Allah as a very vindictive, cruel Muslim deity who just rewarded with instant paradise the Muslim who died putting us infidels to the sword. So I almost felt as if there was a bounty on my head.
You see, this has started with the Crusades. It has a background.
Oh, yes.
Every part of us condemned the other as infidels. The Christians accused the Muslims as infidels, and the Muslims accused the Christians as infidels. No. Quran is here. I had a very interesting discussion with Chancellor Schmidt, the Prime Minister of West Germany. He is a very cultured and learned man. And he also asked, and when I told him what is in Quran, really he was very astounded. The only difference between Christianity and Islam is this. In Quran we say this: God has taken Christ to heaven.
I see.
He was not killed. A man in his imitation was killed. In Islam, we don't want, we were told here that Christ has been elevated to God and he has not been killed or crucified, but an imitation of him. This means that we have great estimation to Christ to the extent that God didn't permit his crucifying, but took him to heavens.
I guess this is the crux of our difference then, isn't it? Because for us, his death was atoning for our sins, you see, so that's why the cross is the symbol of our faith. So we disagree on that area. Do you believe that Christ is coming back?
It is stated in our Quran, before the day everyone will recognize Christ.
Is that right?
Yes, here in Quran.
I wish you would just tell me what you think of God, how you see God. Not as the cruel, vindictive deity that we thought of him as. In fact, I didn't know quite until recently that Allah is the name for God, and that even the Christians in your country worship the same, I mean, they have the same name, Allah.
Yes, yes. I was brought up in a village, as you know.
Yes.
I'm a villager. I learned Quran before I went to the school. You were asking how we envisage God. In spite of my knowing Quran and learning Quran, the man who have opened really the doors of faith for me in the cell 54 is an American author called Lloyd Douglas.
Oh, yes. He's a Christian minister.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes. He started to learn medicine, and then after that he left and he became a priest.
And wrote the Robe, too.
The Robe, but read magnificent obsession for him.
Oh, yes.
Anyone who doesn't have faith will have faith at all, at once.
Right.
And this man has taught me faith.
Isn't that marvelous? Well, just tell us a little bit about your experience in Cell 54, would you?
Well, it is a very hard experience because suddenly you found yourself between four walls, no book to read, no radio to hear the news, no newspaper to do, except just in a cell like this, and for 1 year and a half before they permitted us to have newspapers and books. When we were permitted these books, fortunately, the first book I read was Magnificent Obsession of Lloyd Douglas.
Oh, is that
and then
right?
Continued after that in the same line. In the cell 54, I found myself. I found myself, and I found that through love, I can do miracles. Through hatred, I am impotent.
In fact, I think the expression you used was, my heart was taken over by the love of the Lord of the universe.
Right, right. And let me tell you this. The most happiest 6 months that I lived or ever to live were the last 6 months in the cell. Well,
now, when you said your heart was taken over by the love of the Lord of the universe, was this something that just sort of oozed in on you, or did it happen in a particular time?
No, it is part of my nature, but I couldn't recognize it before I was put in the cell. Let me tell you this. In two places you will find yourself, either in prison or in war. You will find your true self. I found my true self because out of prison, like any other one, and because of this civilization, material civilization, and the man's needs, and so one is always preoccupied. He didn't have the time to meditate or to live inside himself. In this cell, you are either you learn to live inside yourself, or you will become mad, because in four walls, yes, with nothing to do.
True.
So I found myself.
You know, I had an experience of being overwhelmed by the love of God. In fact, I could define it almost in exactly your terms, of my heart was taken over by the love of the Lord of the universe. But when I tried to share it with people in my own rather formal church, they looked at me askance. And I was wondering, did you find people responsive that would to the experience you had, or did they think you were talking a foreign language?
As I told you, when I had this discussion with Helmut Schmidt, the Chancellor of West Germany, and because of the new facts that I told him in Quran, he told me, why don't you write a book? I promised to write a book on this, on the three religions, and you will find that it is one religion according to Quran. I promised, and he asked me to write the foreword of this book. I gave him my word, and I shall be writing this book. Chancellor Helmut Schmidt of Germany will be writing the foreword of this book.
Well, what happened as a result? You discovered there in the cell, I think you said that God wasn't just someone way up there, but he became your personal friend.
Friend, that's right.
And that this was such a liberating experience. I think you said you were set free in that moment.
Right.
From fear of man.
Right.
And from hatred.
Hatred,
today you can hate no
and
man.
From the material needs.
I see. So it really was a liberating experience in prison then, wasn't it?
It is. And as I told you, in two places only you can find yourself, either in prison or in war.
As you know, we evangelicals have been, you might say we've had our arm around Israel and our back towards the Arab world. We've been so completely identified with Israel, first of all, because all of our origins are there, our prophets and apostles and Jesus Christ, and the Bible is all of Jewish origin. Also, you know, we feel that in the prophecies, do you remember Moses stood towards the close of his career, first on the Mount of Blessing, then the Mount of Cursing, and you remember on the Mount of Blessing he told the Israeli people what would happen if they followed God, and the Mount of Cursing, the curse that would befall them. And he said, if you don't, are not faithful to God, God will scatter you to the ends of the earth. And then, but then he won't wash his hands of you. He'll bring you back to Israel. And of course, when they started coming back, we saw this as a plan of God. And when we felt that the Arab world was not accepting the right of Israel to exist, then we felt we had to take sides with Israel against the Arab world. But when you, at your historic peace initiative, announced to the Israelis, we accept your right to exist in peace and security based on justice, then suddenly you, instead of being a menace, as it were, we saw in you an instrument of God.
I shall always consider my initiative, as I said, a sacred mission. And I shall always be proud of it, and I shall always be proud that this is the most important action that I have done during the whole of my life. Be sure of this.
Right now, there seems to be a stalemate, doesn't there, in your peace initiative?
As I have already stated before, unfortunately, really, we are having two languages. No one can understand the other.
No.
From our side, after my initiative to Jerusalem, we have no complexes at all, no bitterness, no hatred, and we have changed it completely by my initiative.
I'd like to ask you some questions about your faith. You look forward to the ultimate triumph of good.
Yes, and love. Yes, and it has been proven through 59 years that I lived until this moment. At the end, the good triumphs.
What makes you think this? In view of the fact that the history of endless warfare and conflict, what makes you think that good is going to triumph?
Because I have seen it, as I told you, as an experience myself during my life. And through love, miracles can be achieved. My initiative itself to Israel, it is pure love instead of hatred, violence, bitterness, and so. But unfortunately, they didn't understand the spirit that is behind it until this moment. As I told you, they speak the same language they spoke before my initiative, while we have here changed it 100%. We have a complete new language. Love, acceptance among us, good neighborhood, in all the sense of good neighborhood.
Do you feel history is coming to a climax?
Yes, I'm sure of this. Now it is the turn towards the moral, honesty, instead of what the civilization has created among us, and the material needs that has really polluted all our conceptions and our relations among ourselves all over the world. I think it is on the peak now, and we are returning again, and we shall return again. This is compulsory. We shall return again.
Now, we evangelical Christians believe in in a organized intelligence, evil intelligence called Satan. Do you believe that there is a Satan, or do you just think of the power of evil?
Yes, for sure I believe in Satan. I believe there is a Satan because it is stated in Quran here.
We share a belief in the afterlife, of course, don't we?
Right.
You believe in paradise and
Yes.
and in hell too?
And in hell, yes.
Now, what determines who goes where?
When we say that God knows beforehand who will go to hell and who will go to paradise, because he is the creator. But it is for us. He has given us the brains and the mind, and he has created us after his image, and part of his soul in us. It is stated in Quran and in the Bible. So it is for us to choose. Here is the wrong, here is the right, and here is the wrong. According to this, what we choose, we choose ourselves, we shall be in the day either in hell or in paradise.
Depending upon on what we...
You have the choice.
The choice between heaven and hell. Everybody would choose heaven.
Between right and wrong. And on this, because God, as I told you, has created us after his image. When he created Adam, our father, he has put part of his soul in him.
I see. Well, this is something we really have in common, that we believe in the importance of the individual, because man is created in the image of God. And, and this is one reason why we believe in human liberty, isn't it?
That is what I'm telling you. We have no differences among us at all. It is illiteracy or fanatism that has created this. The three religions are one.
Now, let's see. Your attitude towards Muhammad is quite different from our attitude towards Christ, isn't it? Now, you don't believe he was divine, do you?
No, he's a human being.
And yet, he's the highest authority figure next to God in your mind, isn't he?
Yes, he is a prophet that came from God, that was sent by God to teach us Islam.
Now, do you believe he wrote the Quran?
No, it came to him from God.
I see.
Yes.
In fact, you don't even like to be called Mohammedans, do you?
Do you know that he was illiterate?
Is that right?
He was illiterate, and Quran is master in the language. How could an illiterate man write a masterpiece in language? This is one of his miracles, because Muhammad didn't bring miracles like Jesus brought, and we recognize it 100%. All what Jesus has done and miracles, it is in Quran.
Oh, is that?
Yes, in Quran.
Well, now, I guess we have quite a different concept. I think this would be the big difference between us, because we see Jesus, of course, as a God who came down and shared our lot and became man, the Son of Man, as he described himself, so that we could become the sons of God. And so he is at the right hand of God the Father in our faith.
Well, we differ on this.
Yes. Mr. Sadat, there's one more thing I wanted to ask you about. I've heard your wife has spoken of this mark in your head as where evidence of your prayer life.
Because of the prayers.
Yes. Now, we Christians think of Muslims as repeating prayers, but I get the impression that you pray spontaneously to God, don't you, too?
5 times a day.
I see. When you pray that way, do you pray stated prayers, or do you sometimes just tell God whatever on your heart?
Well, there is a certain movement that one makes in prayer, as you know.
You don't pray, for example, as you walk down a street or anything. You feel that you must be in a position of reverence.
Well, you can have this, but those 5 prayers are compulsory.
Oh, yes. But you make quite a bit of praying during the night, though, too, don't you?
Yes, you can do it whenever you can, whenever you would like to do it, or you have the time to do it.
Do you pray in your own words, or can you pray in your own words, or must you use stated prayers?
These are, as I told you, we recite Quran. Everything we say in the prayer is from Quran.
You know, in the United States, at the founding of the nation, when the First Continental Congress made, there was a tremendous argument about states' rights versus the sovereignty of the federal government, and they reached an impasse, and it was looked as if it was impossible to resolve it. And so the delegates began going home, and Mr. Benjamin Franklin said, "Gentlemen, we've tried every human recourse, and it has failed." And so he said, "Why don't we get down on our knees and ask the help of God?" And so they stopped their debate, and they got down on their knees. They prayed together for God's help, and the impasse was broken, and as a result, the United States of America was formed. Now, we've just been talking about the common origin and the common heritage that Muslims, Christians, and Jews have. Wouldn't it be wonderful if all three religions could have the same day to pray for each other and for peace in the Middle East? And that you and Mr. Begin and Mr. Carter could each invite your co-religionists, one representing the Jew, one the Israeli, and one the Christians, around the world to join on that day. And every synagogue and mosque and church in the world could be open on that day. Wouldn't that be exciting?
It would be very exciting.
Could I?
And let me make this proposal.
All right, fine. Could you read it out loud?
The Middle East is the birthplace of Muslim, Christian, and Jewish religions, each having much in common with the other. Jews, Muslim, and Christians worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, and Moses, creator of the world and the source of all good. Believers of all three faiths are carrying out for a just and lasting peace. For wars, endless debate, vast human effort has failed to produce this peace. Before God, the merciful, the compassionate, the wise, the good, the just, the best and wisest of men must confess proneness to error and need of his help. I have a proposal here to make.
Okay, good.
We agree to invite our nations and believers everywhere to join us in making the day our father Abraham sacrificed his son as an occasion from which the three religions started. Let us make this day a day for prayer for Christians, Muslims, and Jews to join hearts and voices in prayer for peace in the Middle East. May I add that this prayer every year in this same day I shall be doing myself on Mount Sinai in the mosque and in the church and in the synagogue in the same vicinity.
This is a historic moment. Would you like to invite Mr. Carter and Mr. Begin to join you in this?
Sure, shall be inviting them. And the Pope Paul, I have asked him this when I met him last February on my way back from the States. I have promised to invite him myself personally to this prayer.
Isn't that exciting?
Yes.